Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video I want to talk to you about how to actually ask an editor about a manuscript status during your research. So if you don't know me, I'm a associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out. So many times we're really, really stressed out when we send a manuscript into a journal. For most of us, this is kind of a new experience for us, and we don't sort of realize it takes a long time to get some of these articles back, and especially if you send it to, better journals tend to be a little bit quicker, but they also can be a long time because they are getting your papers under review with somebody that's really smart and intelligent, and they just don't have the resources to sort of devote to your particular project at that time. And that's okay, right? So you have to recognize that it does take time to get reviews back. Normally, the faster the better, but at the same time, it does take a little bit of time to get that back. And if you're working on tight deadlines, which most of us are, but it seems a little bit more important when you're a PhD student or a graduate student. It does really seem important for everybody, but it seems really important at that particular time. And you sometimes freak out and you feel really stressed out that you're not getting your paper back in time. So it says it's going to take, 20 days or something from a journal, and it ends up taking, 30 days. You start freaking out in terms of, what should I do at this moment? So this video is really sort of aimed at you in terms of, how should you ask an editor for your manuscript status in terms of where it's sitting right now. And we all have to deal with this. It's not kind of normal or it's not kind of unusual in any sort of way. Just know it's kind of part of the process. So here's some tips I think are important in order to ask for your manuscript status. So the first thing is just if you think it's taken too long, just wait another week and see, give yourself another deadline and say after another week or, week and a half or something, then I'm going to send an email. So usually it's just a little bit of impatience at that moment, and that's not a bad thing. You're just ready and you want to just get going with the project, right? And so life does happen for the editor on the other side, and don't take too long though in terms of prompting them. It's okay to prompt and to ask them what's going on, because sometimes it does get a little bit stressful on the other side, and you kind of forget, like, oh boy, I got to do something, right? So you have to think about that. That there's a trade-off. You don't want to be too pesty, but at the same time, it's okay to pest once in a while, right? The second thing is before you send it and before you actually make that leap in terms of sending for manuscript status, just get some advice from a senior professor or somebody else that that's close by, that you can just ask in terms of, what do you think about this wording? What do you think if I actually did this at this moment? Just get some advice from people that are close to you and are likely going to look out for your interest. And as well as hopefully if they know the editor a little bit, that could help out as well, because then they can kind of get some insider information on who the editor is in terms of prompting going forward, right? In terms of how you should deal with this, because everybody is different. And if you have these, relationships with editors, sometimes it does help in terms of how to navigate the process, right? Because maybe what's going on, right, in terms of the information, in terms of their prior experiences, right? So I'm not saying that that's like, just sort of using relationships around you and getting some advice and feedback and how to deal with this stuff is really important. It does help. And the third thing, if you actually do go through and you had somebody else look at your prompt, in terms of sending a prompt, just do something that's really simple and indirect in as sort of polite as possible, right? So you don't want to say like, oh, you're taking too long. I'm just inquiring about the status of this manuscript, and really short, direct to the point, and just make it as, indirect in the sense that you're not sort of accusing them of taking too long or anything like that, but you're just kind of being like, oh, how's it going with its manuscript? And just be really polite, really nice, And that's the sort of fourth thing I wanted to point out is really take out the anger. And that's what the other person should be looking at. If you get somebody to look at this, is look to see at how polite this sort of feels. And, sometimes your emotions go into your writing. And so you have to think about, like, what does that emotions, you don't want to have that sort of emotional tone in the writing. So get somebody else to sort of read into, okay, if I said this, how are they actually going to view it? And really just thank the editor for their time and effort, right? Because they have a lot of influence on what's actually going to happen with your paper, right? So if you push them a little too hard, they're going to be annoyed. And that could sort of reflect negatively on the paper in terms of, this is not necessarily a fun thing for me. I don't want to do this. Maybe we can go do something else instead, right? So you don't want to get that into that attitude of how they're going to feel and project into your paper and your manuscript. You want them to be happy and excited, and feel okay that they're that they're devoting resources to your manuscript, right? So sometimes it does take a little bit too long, and it really is taking a long time. Maybe you prompt them already and you haven't had a response back, after a couple of weeks, I guess, maybe a week, at least a week, right? That you've waited for them because they're busy and they might be traveling and stuff like that. And then after, maybe a couple of weeks, you just prompt them again and then CC the senior editor, and they might be a little bit helpful as well, because sometimes it does, weird things happen, right? Like, people die, they go through divorces, all sorts of personal things happen in their life that don't necessarily get reflected in the professional sort of realm of things, and those things are important in terms of dealing with them. And if you can navigate that instead of just being lost and not necessarily having somebody to, relying on one point of contact. If you have multiple points of contact, sometimes it helps in terms of getting through and just getting some information and getting closure on the thing that you're working on, right? So you're not trying to be mean. You're just trying to be, asking for information prompts. That's really what you're trying to do. And you're not necessarily trying to be pushy in any sort of way, but you're just trying to make sure that the paper, the thing that you're working on, is continuing to move throughout the process. And, if that editor fails because they have weird things that happen in their life, they get a divorce, whatever, then, that the senior editor can step in, and maybe that they can sort of direct the relationship, or, maybe that they can hand it off to somebody else. Because, honestly, all this weird stuff does happen in the scientific process. We try not to let it happen, but weird stuff does happen. So you have to manage the process. It's like a good way to think about this is, like, let's say you go to the hospital and you say that you're sick. Well, in order to get through and get the right doctors and see the right things, you have to manage that process. You have to actually see and sort of prod people in a nice way to sort of manage the process in order to get this done, or to get your procedure done, rather than just saying, I'm sick, I'm sore, and relying on everybody else to do that. That works, but that it doesn't work as well as you actually sort of being an active participant in the process and helping guide the process. And that's kind of a way that you should be thinking about this. It's not mean, it's not anger, and it's just kind of prompting people along the way, and just getting the process to flow, and just give people plenty of time. Ask other people around you, is this long enough to wait? If it's long enough, if they say, yeah, you probably waited long enough, I would prompt them. Well, then craft something, prompt them, and then see what happens from there, right? So usually if you prompt and you do it in a polite way, like, I'm just inquiring about the status of the manuscript, really simple, a couple of lines, it usually is good enough to get people to sort of, get them to sort of work on the project that they're working on and get it done and get it back throughout the review process. So hopefully this helped you in terms of navigating the review process. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the whole reciprocity website that I'm trying to build. It's geared towards academics and other research folks in terms of helping them with their writing and getting feedback on the work. So take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.